Rick, I'm just so happy to have you here and thrilled for your support of our work. But it's interesting. You're a travel guru. You're known for your travel throughout Europe. What inspired you to create your documentary, Hunger and Hope, about food insecurity and poverty in the developing world?
Well, Carrie, first of all, I'm so delighted to be here. Every time I get together with you, I'm sort of inspired about how everybody can make a difference in their own way. And you certainly make a difference with your staff and all the people that empower PCI through their support. I hope they recognize that, this is not a charity, it's a service. We care, and we want to empower people who are, skilled and able to get stuff done. And that's why I jumped at the opportunity to help out today. I happen to be a travel writer, and I get to travel. And as a travel writer and a tour guide, I like to challenge Americans to get out of their comfort zone and learn about the rest of the world. And I've got this wonderful platform with public television, and I've long been interested in structural poverty. Why are there hungry people when there's so much money? Can't we figure this out? Yeah. And I know from my travels, and as you and your staff have traveled, we have an advantage because we've seen it, and we know these are real people. And we know there's nothing, proximity and suffering have nothing to do with each other. Suffering across the street is no more real than suffering across the sea. And our challenge is to recognize that we're all children of God, and we can make a difference. And those of us who are privileged, I think it's just a matter of good stewardship of how richly blessed we are to do something with that. So I get to go to places like Guatemala and Ethiopia and meet with the people and see the work that's being done and come back home and share it with people. And my concern lately is that when it comes to fighting hunger and fighting extreme poverty, that it's just so important for Americans to recognize that supporting NGOs makes a difference. And a lot of Americans tend to be cynical about aid and development because of old-fashioned aid that may have been well-meaning, but it caused poor and struggling people to be dependent. Well, maybe that's the case a long time ago, but today's aid is smart, and it creates independence, not dependence. And I wanted to dedicate a 1-hour show on public television to learning about what is modern aid and sort of inspiring people to see who's in the trenches from our community, helping people south of the border in their struggles. And it's just a perfect opportunity for a traveler and public television and so on to get together. So I wanted to humanize extreme poverty, 10% of our planet trying to live on $2 a day. There's always going to be poor people. Half of the planet is $5 a day, and that's kind of life as far as I'm concerned. But there's no need for extreme poverty and hunger. That's the $2 a day people, 700,000 people. So I wanted to humanize that. I wanted to show our viewers here in the United States, the people who are watching right now, that aid is a practical investment. And I wanted to impress upon people that you can do it because you love your neighbor, or you can do it because you want to make the world a safer and more stable place. Either way, it's okay. Just get involved and make a difference. So we made this 1-hour show, Hunger and Hope, Lessons Learned in Ethiopia and Guatemala. It was one of the greatest challenges for me in my creative work as a traveler and a teacher. And it's so great to be able to bring that home and then share what we learned and try to inspire Americans to think bigger about fighting hunger and fighting extreme poverty.
So in the documentary, you visited Ethiopia and Guatemala. I'm just curious as to why you chose those countries, and what did you learn about organizations like PCI while you were there?
Well, I wanted to make a 1-hour show about why there is hunger and why aid is a good investment. What's the structural basis of hunger? Why, again, when there's so much money and affluence and resources on this planet, do we have this problem? And I wanted to, and that's kind of wonky, and I didn't want people's eyes to glaze over, so I wanted to make it good TV. And I thought it'd be kind of fun to bounce back and forth between two hemispheres, Africa and Central America. I wanted to, part of it was, where do I have contacts? I mean, you guys, PCI, are really good in Guatemala, so I had good friends there because you and I have worked together in the past, and I thought, great, I can highlight some of the work that PCI is doing. And the Gates Foundation is really good in Ethiopia. They basically own the NGO work in Ethiopia in the way of they are connected with the government, and whatever Gates wants to have happen in Ethiopia for a TV crew, we can make it happen. So with partners like you and Gates and a few other organizations, I was able to, as kind of a rookie when it comes to development aid work, have access and have experts to walk with as I learned about this as a, sort of somebody steep on the learning curve. Ethiopia is just a very telegenic country. The people are just beautiful. The landscape is beautiful. The story is amazing. It's the only country in Africa that really hasn't had a long colonial experience. And Ethiopia is a success story as far as steady, gradual improvement of their economic situation because of good governance. And I think good governance is a big deal. Guatemala, on the other hand, was a very appealing place to visit because it's one of the most indigenous countries, or it has an Indian population that really is just so much fun to get to know and also to understand the racism that's in a lot of structural poverty. So you got half of the country who are who've been there long before the Hispanics came and so on, and they happen to be the poorest people, which is so often the case. So I wanted the most indigenous country in our hemisphere to be either Bolivia or Guatemala. And Americans have a big place in their heart for Guatemala. I had some good contacts in Guatemala. So I thought Guatemala and Ethiopia would be good destinations. Carrie, I had to be careful not to do a travel log because we didn't do any of the famous travel sites. These countries were used as a classroom for teaching the basics, the rudiments of poverty. Why is there poverty, and why is development aid from NGOs like PCI a good investment? Why is it smart, and what difference is it making?
One of the funnest things for us was seeing the world unfold before you as you were visiting Guatemala and meeting the farmers that we work with and the moms that we work with, and seeing the way you engaged with people. What was it that surprised you most about visiting Guatemala? And I'm pointing out Guatemala because that's where we spent time with you.
Yeah, because PCI was really my fixer, you'd call it, in Guatemala. Yes. And to be able to walk with farmers whose parents and grandparents had farmed that same land, and to be able to hear in their voice, translated, but in their voice, the struggles that climate change has caused them. How all of a sudden, all the rules are changed. And all of a sudden, what used to be the hunger season that started every April, now it starts in February. Yeah. And to realize how real that is, and to understand the humanity of it. These challenges, whether it's COVID or climate change or whatever, they hit the poorest countries hardest, and they hit the poorest people in the poorest countries hardest. So to see that, on the other hand, to see people I understand about half of the world's population is smallholder farms, and this is so exciting to see the small family farms, and in Guatemala to see the importance of land reform, where people can get firm title to their land. That's a big deal. If you think about the struggles going out throughout history and throughout the developing world today, so much of it is about land. It's about, it's about getting a roof over your head. It's about having some dirt to grow your rice and beans for your kids. And to understand that and appreciate that's a big deal. And then to get to know these farmers whose families have just grown corn and tried to subsist for generations. And now, with help from an NGO like PCI, to learn that you can use your soil smarter, you can use seeds smarter, and you can get involved in the global economy. You're no longer a subsistence farmer trying to get through the winter just with enough corn, but you're dedicating half of the land to your basic staple crop like corn, and the other half is diversified, and you're growing snap peas or sugar peas, and you don't even like sugar peas. None of your kids eat sugar peas, but you're selling that in London. And you're getting into the, the value chain, and you are becoming an entrepreneur. And we walked with a great farmer named Pedro, and he was walking through his snap peas. It was like way up on the side of a volcano somewhere in Guatemala. And he said, I feel like I'm walking through money when I'm walking through my snap peas. And I was eating them the whole time. My producer said, Rick, stop eating the peas. And I just thought, here's a perfect example. If every skeptic about the value of loving people in the developing world could walk with me with Pedro and see this entrepreneur that, because of an NGO like PCI, got firm control of his land. He got help to know the importance of good nutrition for their children, that they got an appreciation of taking care of their soil and about using smart seeds in consideration of climate change, and that we're able to tap into the global economy. This should just get every skeptic about, kumbaya kind of loving your neighbor and giving him money. It's so real you get down there. And this is something that any capitalist, any person anywhere in the political spectrum should embrace. This is enabling people to work hard and to be stable, and not to leave their country out of desperation and come to the United States, but stay there, work on land that's their families, with their son and daughter who will own that land when mom and dad are gone. I just was so inspired by it. And I could talk all day about the experiences I had thanks to my friendship with organizations like PCI and others that let us walk in the fields with these farmers and sit in the circle with the moms that were learning the importance of hygiene and good nutrition for their kids.
You know, one thing we're working with you on is your Climate Smart initiative, and climate change is such a huge issue, especially in places like Guatemala and Ethiopia, and it's one of the major reasons for migration to our country. You want to talk about that as a barrier to progress?
Yeah, as a tour organizer, I just think it's only ethical that I pay for the carbon that we emit when our people fly from the United States to Europe to meet my tour buses. And I learned that, it costs $30 smartly invested in third world development aid from a climate smart point of view to mitigate the carbon a privileged American creates when they fly to Europe and back for their vacation. I like this idea of just tackling the low hanging fruit. What's an easy thing? Well, people deforest the land when they have to go out scavenging for firewood, and they got to cut down trees to have their firewood so they can cook their food and have their fires going on at home. You can have a smart stove, and a smart stove takes about a quarter of the firewood. And it also has this chimney so that you don't have a room filled with smoke that causes respiratory problems especially for the moms and the children. There's a lot of reasons why you would want to invest just a few bucks in a smart stove, but that's an example of how an NGO can help empower local people to be healthier, to do their work, and to do it while having less of a negative impact on their environment. If everybody just had to desperately cut down trees for firewood, they'd have to walk farther and farther every day. And every time as the rains come in more torrential downpours instead of gentle sprinkles, it would wash away more of the topsoil, which is the worst thing to lose in these areas. And with the work of PCI, we're saving the topsoil, we're saving the forests, and we're helping people have environments that are not so smoky and bad for their health, and they're better for the environment. It's a win-win-win kind of thing. And all it takes is a little smarts from organizations like yours with a little support from people like me and everybody who's watching right now. And we make that happen. Is that a charity? No, that's a service. It's something I want to get done, and I don't know how to do it, but you know how to do it. So what I'm going to do to get what I want to get done is empower you to do your work. And then I'm on the team. All I got to do is support you financially so that you can do that good work, and we're all in this together.
Rick, one of the most important issues in our world today is COVID-19, and you've talked about it a little bit, but I just really love your reflection on how COVID-19 is affecting these communities and their progress towards ending poverty.
COVID is going to, a lot of people die from the disease, but in the developing world, we got to remember that far more people are going to die from the dislocation and the disruption of transportation and supply chains and so on that's going to come with COVID. So we've got to realize that we've got good people working at PCI and all sorts of other NGOs that are down there in the trenches, helping out in a very sensitive and culturally appropriate kind of way. But because of COVID, it's hard to get to places. It's hard to get to those health posts that are off the grid. And these health posts are vital. So there's going to be a secondary impact of COVID that's going to be more deadly than the disease itself. And if we've got people down there working to help these struggling communities during times of COVID, and they don't have enough financial wherewithal to do their work, there's really no excuse for that. So especially during COVID, I think we need to keep the wheels turning and to keep the fueling the tanks for the people who are dedicating their careers to helping people in the developing world. I'm so inspired by people who are aggressive enough and smart enough and talented enough to get really high-paying, exciting jobs here in the rich world, who have chosen, just because they've got big hearts and they honestly love their neighbors, they've chosen to dedicate their careers to helping people south of the border, knowing they're never going to make the big bucks or get the esteem you might get in some skyscraper in a big city. But they're the heroes in my mind, and they are the heroes, and they're doing it right now, and they're doing it courageously in times of COVID. And it makes me more determined than ever to keep the NGOs that enable them to do their work well funded so that people can get through this time north and south of the border.
I think that the people who are attending today are people who are interested in fighting extreme poverty, are interested in the same things you are, and are committed to PCI. But how can they learn more about fighting extreme poverty, and what can they do to help end it? And I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about Hunger and Hope and where they can access it if they haven't seen it already. Love to have you talk about your book.
The show, Rick Steves' Hunger and Hope, Lessons Learned from Ethiopia and Guatemala. It airs on public television all over the country. People can watch it anytime for free on my website at ricksteves.com or on YouTube, or you can just search for it online and watch it streaming. But I think that's a very powerful first hour. But I hope it just is an appetizer and inspires people to reach out more. We got to get serious about climate change, and we got to get serious about getting through COVID in the developing world. And then we can continue to eradicate hunger on this planet. And when we do that, our country will be more stable. In the last generation, we have cut extreme poverty by 50%. It went from 2 billion to 1 billion. That's exciting. We got it down to 10% of the planet. Again, I'm not some sort of guy that thinks everybody can have 2 cars in the garage. I don't think that's possible. But we don't need extreme poverty. Half of the world's trying to live on $5 a day. Okay, we just want to address the desperation, the hopelessness that comes with that $2 a day level, where the United Nations says this is the cutoff for extreme poverty and hunger. And I think that we would be motivated to help stabilize this planet by giving people reason to hope. That's what I called it, hunger and hope. And PCI is giving millions of people, if not directly, at least indirectly, the reason to hope and to work hard and to stay home. But the challenges are serious when you've got climate change and we've got COVID. And I've seen it, and I've seen how gratified mothers are to be sitting down and learning the importance of nutrition. It's not just calories, it's good calories, you know. I've seen it when we learn how mothers, and I got to say it's mothers because Modern Aid and PCI knows this and embraces this as well as every other on-the-ball NGO. It's the women that are the nurturing ones, and they take responsibility and they take care of their community. And time again, when we educate and empower the women in these developing societies, that's where we start getting traction and making real progress. And of course, the moms are the ones with the kids, and the moms need to know that you got to wash your hands or the kids are going to get diarrhea. You got to give them smart nutrition or they're going to be stunted. And we got to educate kids, and governments are getting it. NGOs certainly get it, and the local people want it. We don't need a bunch of people with their university degrees. We need people who are literate and then who get their vocational training, and then they're eager to get into the workforce. So long-winded answer, but you asked me how can people learn more? Well, first of all, I really enjoyed packing everything I couldn't put into the show in this book. And today, anybody who's going to donate $100 or more to empower PCI will get a copy of this book. And this is triple the content of the show. And it's also a lot of beautiful photographs from my time in Ethiopia and in Guatemala, and a little behind the scenes look at how we made the show.
Rick, this has been such a privilege, such a pleasure. Your joy is apparent, your passion for this work, and we're just so very grateful to you. So thank you so much for being with us.
It's my pleasure to be part of your team, Carrie, and on behalf of everybody that cares about development aid, smart development aid, I just want to congratulate your entire staff at PCI for the work you do. I've seen you in the field, and I'm just so inspired by it. So I'm happy to be part of this event.
Well, thank you so much.